I am Resident of Color with Joel Saints. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We are here
I
to talk The Love God starring Don Knotts. I love all the little voices he does and the bird calls.
They're fantastic. I think they were probably, I don't think that was Don. I think that those were pre-recorded, and he just was
Oh,
making one weird face after another. But they're fantastic.
he sells it.
He really does. Yeah.
I love how they filmed the church sequence. I they did you we were talking briefly. You said they did this on a set in a studio.
Yeah, they did this all in the studio. I mean, I don't know if there was a single shot done outside, really. I think this was all backlot studio stuff.
Even though like there's their little like not a jungle sequence, but like when he goes in the boat.
He goes to Brazil.
Yeah, that looks good. If that's a set, that looks good. I gotta say.
They had the parts that may have been outside. There was a popular place. There were several in Hollywood, but there was one called Africa, USA, where they did a lot of shooting at. If you ever saw a jungle scene, and this was shot at Universal, which had a pretty good backlot. MGM also had a really good jungle backlot and I think Fox did also. And one of those is where they filmed Gilligan's Island.
Ooh.
The lagoon shows up a lot in different things, just shot at different angles.
So you don't recognize it that well, like
I don't. I know people who can just immediately spot it, but I'm not that good.
I'm not either. I'm thinking I didn't really like try to recognize anything. I really love, because this is the After Dark Shadows. I really love first of all the color of the sets, because they pop huge.
They do.
And they get your attention is well before like anybody walks, as people are walking into the room, and Don Knotts just makes everything brighter, what he's wearing.
Well, that was the fashion of color then, because I think largely because of TV. When TV had its first color season, this was what, 72 when this movie was made?
Hold on.
I think it was 72.
Sure.
Either way.
19. Oh, sorry.
When? When does it say?
1969.
Wow, 69. Okay. So this was just 3 years after TV went all color. And when TV went all color, it was in 66. And it was, at least NBC went all color in 66. And they really jacked up the color. And one of the reasons that they did it was that NBC was owned by a guy named David Sarnoff. And David Sarnoff owned RCA also. And RCA made TVs, color TVs. So they wanted that color in those windows showing NBC programs to look amazing. And so that was still the fact. So Hollywood really had to compete. Hollywood always had these weird colored processes. Often 20th Century Fox color around this period would be some of the most fantastic. And, later they would switch to a different stock of film that recorded images a little duller. So, if you look at the color in Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's not quite as saturated. But, the early Technicolor was incredibly saturated because they filmed at the same time on 3 different colored strips of film and then put them together and really chemically, ooched up the color. So Hollywood was still used to that.
Yeah.
And it gives it an unreality.
It looks really great here too. With like, I wasn't like alive in the 60s, but I can see why they did this in a studio for the sets and for the television, because it fits. It
fits, and you have a lot more control over the lighting.
Well, even watching it on my computer today, it's still like it looks good, because I watch this on the National Archives.
Yeah,
it looks great, and
it's a good-looking movie.
Yeah, the church too. I love how Don Knotts is. The choir's behind him singing, he's swaying back and forth. And at first I thought, because I didn't see the preacher right away, because I had to turn away for something, I'm thinking, wait, is Don Knotts playing the preacher? No, he's not.
Oh, if only. If only.
But I love all what did you think of all the costumes they put Don Knotts in this?
What amazing costume design, especially when, he starts becoming a swinger. And there's that montage where he's just in all the, he's snapping his fingers, he's in all the different outfits. Uh, it's really vibrant, and with especially Anne Francis's character, the reporter who becomes the editor of the magazine, they managed to make her really, really, really attractive, but yet the costumes still have kind of a primness to them. There's no cleavage or anything like that. Even when she's in the lingerie, it looks like it could take a bullet.
Yeah. Yeah, the lingerie in this, like when she's taking off her stockings and everything, when Dawn Knotts is like laying in the bed,
Yeah,
like she was taking off a lot of stuff.
there were many layers.
Yeah, I'm thinking, man, is she wearing the suit of armor under?
It's interesting. It is a real token of a different period
Yeah.
of even into the late 70s and beyond. There's certain women with how many layers they wore, because there were slips and girdles and just like it just went on and on. And it really makes me admire the price of glamour,
Yeah, I like how too. I think in this movie they're using it sort of as a gag too. Like in my opinion, what do you think?
A little bit, certainly. It manages to stretch things out, and you have one lurid thing to take off after another. It's not just a bra and briefs.
Yeah,
It's a lot, and so it builds anticipation and so on.
yeah. My mother-in-law, she was alive during the '60s. When I married Julie, she was telling me what like women would wear to bed, and what her mother would wear, and what she would wear. I'm like, that's not what people wear today. She goes, no, it isn't. So,
Like, was it a lot of layers? Was it
yeah, she was.
slips and camisoles and?
Well, she lived in when she grew up. She lived in California, not Pennsylvania. My mother-in-law, and she says especially at night, like people would be surprised how cool it gets in California at night when that sun's down. So you're wearing more of the stockings for to stay warm because you don't want you don't want a heavy blanket. If you have all those layers on, you can have like a nice thin blanket.
Yeah,
that's what I remember her telling me that, and I never thought about that until I watched this movie. I'm thinking, I really thought about my mother-in-law. I was like, wow, yeah, now I get why she told me all that stuff. Oh my god, Dawn Knotts.
You had a hip mother-in-law.
Yeah, when she met Julie's dad, she drove all the way from California to Pennsylvania.
That's dedication.
She didn't fly. And she's like, when she got out here, it was snowing and stuff. She told me that. And she had a picture. She had a picture of it when she shut. She goes, you see this shit I showed up to? I'm like, what?
Quite a shock.
Right. She goes, now I've seen snow in California, but it's in the mountains. I said, so you came to the Pennsylvania mountains and saw more snow? She goes, yeah, unfortunately.
It's a fact of life.
Yeah. When do you think studios realized how great Dawn Knotts was at comedy?
Oh, I mean, this was after, this was after Andy Griffith's show and all of that. And so he had been, I think he was on maybe the Steve Allen show or something. I think he had appeared in variety shows and things like that, even prior to that. I think, when you look like Don Knotts, you're automatically, not going to be playing a lot of romantic leads. And so I think he knew, which side of the bread his butter was on. And that was the comedy side. And he was a master at it. I mean, just the different takes and faces and the way he was able to go from one extreme to another, almost mechanically, was just a riot. There was a guy named Henri Bergson who wrote a book called On Comedy, which is considered to be the best book on comedy ever written. And it was written a long time ago. I mean, a long time ago, well over 100 years ago, I think. And he talked about when humans behave unlike humans, but rather as machines, going from one extreme to another, that automatically has something amusing to it. And it was one of his many insights on it. And Don Knotts is a good example of that.
I love how he's sitting in the courtroom and the lawyer's up there saying he disgusts me, but when his rights are being trampled on, I'm gonna be there, and I'm here.
Well, did you recognize that actor?
Yeah, he's from the Manchurian Candidate.
Manchurian Candidate, and he also, in a lot of heavy makeup, is the bad guy gorilla in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. The only good human is a dead human. And invade, invade, invade. Now that was James Gregory.
Yeah, he did a great job. Like, cause I forgot how funny James Gregory could be, because there's moments of comedy from him in the Manchurian Candidate.
Yes,
and
he's a funny man.
Yeah, he was really good. His timing was really good in the courtroom, and Don not selling for him with the reaction. It's whispered in the guy's ear. What did you think, man?
The courtroom scene is one of it may be my favorite scene in the movie, just to kind of spoil a surprise. I think it's phenomenal, and Gregory is at the heart of it. I mean, all this talk when the prosecutor is talking about this filthy little degenerate, and look at him, thin from dissipation and so on, and then Gregory just picks it up and goes even further with it. I thought was just a riot, and Knotz's reactions to all of that really make it work also.
Because I watched this for the first time, I was not expecting a mob presence in the movie, and I was pleasantly surprised by it.
Yeah, the ice pick.
Yeah, yeah, he is. He's like, no, he gets so offended, and his goons get so offended when people call him that. It's so good.
It's Mr. Twilight.
Yeah, Mr. Twilight. Do you think this might be weird? Do you think at all that Mr. Twilight is sort of a weird spoof for the Twilight Zone in a weird way?
Oh, honestly, no, but I wish he were. I think it's just a goofy name that they gave him. But I wish.
I do too. I'm thinking Mr. Twilight. I was sort of wondering, because I was watching it. I'm wondering, did they just borrow that from the Twilight Zone as sort of like a nod to?
I wish. It'd be a better movie if they did. Now we got to find a part for Rod Serling in this.
Yeah, he would. I tell you what, I would have made Rod Serling, just Rod Serling, the Bob Boss's henchman, because he looks that tough.
It would have been great. And the funny thing about Rod Serling in a part like that is that Rod was a really little man. I think he was like 5'4". He was a very, very, very little guy. You know who else is a real little guy is Jon Stewart, who I think maybe 5'6".
Really?
Yeah. You never think that because you always see him behind a desk.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a very he's not a tall guy.
It's weird because when he had appeared at a SummerSlam. He interfered in a match. And
who did?
Jon Stewart.
From Daily Show?
Yeah, he interfered. It was years ago. John Cena was wrestling, I think, The Miz or somebody. And John Cena was basically going to tie Ric Flair's title record, which is 16-time champion. Yeah. And Jon Stewart cost John Cena the match, which is hilarious.
That's funny.
In itself. And it's weird how the camera makes you look like he didn't look that short at first until he's standing next to Cena, who's taller than him. And Cena's looking at him like, how could you?
That's great.
If I find the clip, I'll send it to you.
Please do.
Let me see. I'm trying to hold on. I want to make sure I read. Yeah, Andy, the Griffin Show was 1960 to 1968.
Yeah, it ran forever, and the seasons were really long. They were like 35 episodes each. I mean, they were just nuts.
I do remember Don Knotts, not just from this and now from Scooby-Doo, because he did the voice on Scooby-Doo.
Yes.
He guest starred. But there was a commercial he was in where he dressed in his old Mayberry outfit, and he said, "Hey, kids, what are you doing?" I forget the commercial, what it's for. I remember him, not what was being sold.
Oh, Barney Fife is one of the giant characters of television. He really is. There's nobody like him.
Where do you put this in his funny roles? Because he's hilarious.
This is a very underrated movie, and it's a movie that's very much between two different sort of generations of comedy. I put it pretty high. I mean, I would say, Barney Fife tops, and then things like Ghost of Mr. Chicken and that stuff is right up there too. I think Don Knotts also found a great comedy partner later with Tim Conway. They did the Apple Dumpling Gang movies and the Private Eyes. Have you ever seen the Private Eyes?
No.
Oh God, they made that very late. That was like 1979, 1980, and it's classic. They're detectives in a haunted house. It's that movie. It was a movie that was about 10 years out of date, and I loved it. I mean, it was a real, we wanted more. And I haven't seen the Private Eyes, and we should watch the Private Eyes. I haven't seen Private Eyes in years, and it's a lovely film.
Yeah, I'll message. I'll look for it, and then I'll message Alan and see if he wants to do it.
Okay, that would be great. I haven't seen it
for
in
tomorrow.
Forever.
For tomorrow, if you're good.
I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I will say that with this movie, his timing is so good, because I didn't even realize like the sounds he was making weren't really his, as you were like.
I don't think they were. Those were pretty elaborate, and they were right on the money.
He's so good, and his interaction with the mob bosses at first, so because they tower over him, they're so like bulky. Like, I like how he walks past, he clubs the mob boss, which is just hilarious when you think about it. And he's walking past the goons, and they're just like, "Oh, hey." Oh, the comedy. I'm like, and then the other guy who got him into this, the porn guy, or snuff guy, if you will, he's just like, "Oh, we gotta help, and we got him into this," or something, or the girl says it, and they try to. I do like the con of this though, because he offers like to buy the magazine. He hustles them into this whole sort of situation.
So he's specifically impoverished.
Yeah, and then he sends them. "Oh, you got to go here. You got to go here." And they take the one woman. "Hey, you're going to." They take his what was it, secretary or something.
Yeah,
"You're going to New York," and she's like, "New York." She's all excited.
Yeah. And she's got the pink wig on later, and she's converted.
I'll tell you my favorite scene in this, and it's a multitude of scenes, how they're describing how he'll be picked up by a fancy limo, a fancy boat, and it's all garbage.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Like, only Don Knotts could get him, a character of Knotts could get himself into this.
He had a contract at this point with Universal, and so he made a group of fantastic movies. There was this, Shakiest Gun in the West, so he covered westerns. Of course, Ghost of Mr. Chicken, and The Reluctant Astronaut with Leslie Nielsen as an astronaut.
That's awesome. I wish they would have had him in a weird way, found a way to spoof Jaws, because that would have been.
Jaws hadn't been made yet, but you mean like later on?
Yeah,
it would have been great. Would he have been more of the Brody or more of the Quint?
I think for just change of difference, he'd have been like the angry Quint, but he gets like how Quint would get everything like on a boat right because he's a captain. He gets it all wrong.
Of course he does. Yeah.
And his isn't called the Orca. His, just to get his like career spoof, his is called the Mayberry.
The Mayberry, yeah, the Dorca.
Oh my god!
It's a fun movie, and for me, the anchor of it is that epic musical number where he's opening all the clubs, and you have that amazing Mr. Peacock song, which to me is one of the most upbeat, fun musical numbers in a movie of this era, and it reminds me of the Dr. Goldfoot song a little bit.
The inside of the club looked really great too. Again, for all the sets they get done here, like every little piece it looks good. I'm surprised. I wonder, Cy Thomasoff would be proud of that set.
He'd be very proud.
Yeah.
Think of also all the different ways that they get around saying that he's a virgin.
Yeah.
Because that's the big joke in the movie is that, and how insulted he gets when people say, "Look at him, he couldn't possibly have and then They use some weird euphemism.
Yeah, they do. They do eventually say virgin, but it's like such a sacred, like that. We can't say that word.
Well, and Hollywood and studios at that time were still a little, it was, that's why I say it was a transitional movie. I think the ratings code had just been created. So they were testing the waters to see what they could do. And I kept wondering, who is the audience for this film? Because it's a little too tame for audiences that, want to see something a little wilder. And it's way too wild to have gone to see with your grandparents.
Yeah.
If they had just taken you to see The Reluctant Astronaut a few years before, and now it's this. So I imagine there were a lot of uncomfortable conversations between kids and grandparents, during the movie. Kids being hauled out of the movie. He's the love god. Well, that sounds fine. He's good at making women fall in love with him. No, it's not that movie.
But I do like how they handle the attraction with the women, because it's classily done.
Well, and it has a lot to do with the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
That because people are told over and over and over again, this is the most desirable man on the planet, they begin to believe it, which has an interesting suggestion about the nature of desire. How much of it is what you're told or what you tell yourself, and how much of it is natural.
I sort of wonder if a little movie called The 40-Year-Old Virgin got some inspiration from this.
I'm sure if at the very least, I'm sure that Steve Carell and Judd Apatow are fond of that, are fond of the Love God, and have talked about it.
Because at least not all of it, but some of the way Don Knotts' character is a little bit like what Steve Carell tries to somewhat pull off, but he's not like all the way what Don Knotts' character is, mind you. But because he's embarrassed about being a virgin in the movie.
Yeah, it's an unmanly thing for someone who's clearly about 40.
Yeah. Here they're trying. I like how when they finally say the word, the word virgin, it's done so good though. Like we talked about the timing of this movie, that was well timed too, because it doesn't feel dirty in this movie in a weird way.
What this movie maybe is missing is him having a swinger pal, a male swinger pal, who's trying to talk him through, how to behave this way. He has no male mentor. Yeah. And that's an interesting, Anne Francis is the closest that you come. And she was quite an actress. She played a secret agent named Honey West around this time on TV. That was this female James Bond figure. Oh, wow. And was quite easy on the eyes. Interesting actress. Her career didn't really, go as far as we thought it would. And she's so beautiful and so charismatic in this movie.
Yeah, she does a really great job too of one being the press agent, like the woman in the press, and then taking over positioning herself to take over the magazine really well. Her character's very sly, and I like how after she lays in bed with Don Knotts, there is that scene where the mob boss is like smacking her around, like how dare you?
Yeah.
And then Don Knotts' character, he catches her in the end. He catches what she says, and it breaks his heart. Like, how could you? Like, I thought you were attracted to me. It gives it that reality moment of, okay, they're using me, and I love. They did that again really well because he's just standing there, but he catches them, and it's the way they shoot it too, because it's like they make sure you don't see him, and then when he's just standing there, it's like, oh shit, he heard him.
And Don Knotts is so lovable that you immediately feel for him.
Yeah. Well, I think too, even though it's funny, where you really feel for him too, as it's meant for comedy, but as he's going to hang himself, it's like, no, dude, don't do that.
Yeah.
Because they knock on the door. And he's like, oh, they answer, and they tell him who's going to defend him. He's like, oh, he's all hopeful. that's what gets him to the trial. Really, the hope of getting his name cleared.
Sure.
But yeah, they got other plans.
Goes in deeper.
Yes. And that's another running gag too. He keeps telling that girl, "Oh, when I come back, when I do this."
Oh, Rosellen.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a great gag too in the movie because, and you almost gotta you gotta make sure you don't miss it. If anybody who's watching this, make sure you don't miss all those times because it's one of the best gags in this movie until they get married.
Yeah.
I do like, even though they do this church earlier, I love how they shoot the wedding because they're giving you a little deception here.
There's misdirection, yeah.
Yeah. I like that because you're not expecting, after what happened, the bride to walk out, that girl. And she does, and it's like, oh, cool. They're actually going to give this dude a decent ending for you. It's one of the most unsuspecting sort of twists in the movie that's really good.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. Yeah. For me, I give it about a 9.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9.5. I liked it a little
Good
more.
For you. Good for you.
Because I simply love how Don Knotts just plays it really cool and does all these cool sound, whether he did the sound effects or not, and the fact
the character gives them.
Yeah,
and
yeah, and the fact that the way he does his lineage there's all those pictures on the wall of his ancestors. He nails this, and it's not a shock. I mean, he's always been funny. He was always a funny guy. I remember watching some episodes of Mayberry with my grandfather, and he goes, "You gotta watch this crazy dude."
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it's called the Andy Griffith Show, but you tune in for Don Knotts.
Yeah, you do. They were a great 1-2 punch. Him and Andy. I mean, they really were. They complement. It's what happens when two really smart actors work with each other, and they're so good.
The beauty of it is, I think Andy Griffith is so effortless in his way that he conveys masculinity and authority. He doesn't even have to try, and it's just there. And then at the same time, you have Don Knotts, and all he does is try, and it doesn't work. And that's the beauty of that combination, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything you want to add, Patrick, before we go?
No. It's a fun movie. Go watch it.
The other name of that movie is Private what?
The Private Eyes.
The Private Eyes. Okay, I'm going to contact Alan.
Look it up. See if you can find a link.
I definitely will. If I do, I'll send it to you and Alan.
Sounds good.
Link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Day book Abound is going to be the description. Go pick it up if you haven't already. Good night, good sir.
Good night. Bye.